AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she asked me not to bring my daughter. So for context, I, 34F, have a daughter, Lily, 7F, who is on the autism spectrum. She's an amazing kid, sweet, curious, and loves animals more than anything. She's verbal, but sometimes she struggles with sensory overload, especially in loud or crowded settings. We've worked really hard to help her handle those situations better, and she's made huge progress. My younger sister, Chloe, 29F, is getting married next spring. We used to be close, though things got a little distant after she moved to another state for work. She's always been the glamorous one, very into aesthetics, image, planning everything down to the smallest detail. When she got engaged last year, she immediately started planning this Pinterest-perfect outdoor vineyard wedding. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. She asked me to be her maid of honor, which I appreciated, though I warned her that I might need to coordinate childcare if the events got too long or late. She said it was fine, and that she wanted Lily there as her flower girl. I thought that was really sweet and told Lily, who was over the moon. She's been practicing throwing pretend petals ever since. About a month ago, Chloe came to visit so we could go over some details in person. That's when things started going downhill. We were sitting in my kitchen when she suddenly got quiet and said she needed to talk about something sensitive. Then she told me that she and her fiancé, Daniel, had been rethinking the guest list and the vibe they wanted for the wedding. Apparently, they wanted a refined and adult atmosphere, and that meant no children under 12. I immediately felt my stomach drop. I asked, "Wait, so Lily can't come?" Chloe gave me this awkward smile and said, "I know it sucks, but it's just easier. You know how unpredictable kids can be." I reminded her that she'd asked Lily to be her flower girl. She said she'd been on the fence about it, and that Daniel's parents had brought up concerns about noise and distractions during the ceremony. Then she said something that still makes my blood boil. I just don't want there to be a meltdown in the middle of my vows. I told her that Lily has been doing great lately, and that I'd make sure she had everything she needed to stay calm. I even offered to have my husband step out with her if she got overwhelmed. But Chloe shook her head and said, "It's not just that. The whole theme is very elegant, and I don't think a kid really fits that." I asked if she realized how hurtful that sounded, especially since she'd been calling Lily our little flower girl for almost a year. She sighed and said, "Don't make this about feelings. It's just logistics." I told her I wouldn't be coming to the wedding if my daughter wasn't welcome. She immediately accused me of being dramatic and selfish. She said, "It's one day. Can't you just come alone?" I said no. I wasn't going to leave my kid home after she'd been promised such a big role. She called me later that night crying, saying I was ruining her special day and that our mom was on her side. Speaking of mom, she called me the next day to try and mediate. But her version of mediating was telling me to be the bigger person and not let a child ruin my sister's wedding. She said Lily wouldn't even remember missing it, and that Chloe deserved to have the day she dreamed of. I told her that was exactly the problem. Everyone was treating Lily like an inconvenience rather than a person. For weeks, I've been getting subtle and not so subtle pressure from family members to reconsider. My aunt texted me saying, "It's a wedding, not a daycare." My cousin, who's never even met Lily, chimed in on Facebook saying I was using my kid's condition for attention. Daniel even called me once to smooth things over, but his version of that was suggesting I attend the ceremony alone and FaceTime Lily in later. I hung up on him. Now, Chloe has replaced me as maid of honor with one of her friends. She sent me a long message saying she still wants me to come as a guest, but respects my decision if I can't handle it. That last line really got to me, like I'm some unstable person for wanting my daughter included in family life. I've spent the last few weeks going back and forth about it. My husband supports my decision not to go, saying that excluding Lily like that is cruel. But my parents keep telling me that family means compromise and that I'll regret not being part of my sister's big day. Here's the thing. I don't want to punish Chloe. I know weddings are stressful. I know she wants it to be perfect. But how can I stand there smiling, pretending everything's fine when my little girl, who was so proud to be a flower girl, was excluded because she might not fit some aesthetic? A few days ago, I told Chloe officially that we wouldn't be attending. She read the message and didn't respond. Then my mom called, furious, saying Chloe was devastated and that everyone is talking about how selfish I am. Apparently, my cousin posted a vague Facebook status about certain people making weddings about themselves, and now I'm being painted as the villain of the family. Even my dad, who's usually level-headed, told me that sometimes we have to make sacrifices for harmony. I asked him what kind of harmony leaves a 7-year-old feeling like she's not good enough to be part of her aunt's life. He didn't have an answer. Lily asked me yesterday if Aunt Chloe was mad at her. I told her no, that sometimes adults make weird decisions, but it's not her fault. She said she still wants to send Chloe the drawing she made of them at the wedding. I had to step into the hallway so she wouldn't see me cry. I keep wondering if I overreacted. Maybe I should have just gone for the day, smiled for the photos, and moved on. Maybe Chloe's right that it's just one day. But then I think about what message that sends to Lily, that she has to stay out of sight so other people can have their perfect moments, that she's too different to be included. I love my sister. I really do. But I can't pretend this didn't cut deep. I don't know if I'll ever look at her the same way again. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she uninvited my daughter. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give up my seat at Thanksgiving dinner after my sister uninvited me and then begged me to come last minute. So this whole mess started about 2 months ago when my older sister, Megan, 34F, decided she wanted to host a classy, adult-only Thanksgiving dinner this year. For context, I'm 29M, married to my wife Ella, 27F, and we have a 2-year-old daughter named Sophie. My family is pretty close, and we've always done big family holidays with everyone. Kids running around, chaos in the kitchen, people drinking too much wine, the whole thing. But this year, Megan said she wanted something different because she and her husband just bought a new house, and she wanted to finally host something worthy of Instagram. She literally said that. Everyone kind of rolled their eyes, but we agreed to let her take charge. Then, 2 weeks later, she sent a group message to the family saying that this Thanksgiving was going to be adults only. Now, my parents were mildly disappointed because they love having their grandkids around, but they said it was her event, her rules. The problem? That rule only seemed to apply to my kid. My younger brother, Luke, 26M, doesn't have kids, and Megan and her husband, Jason, don't either. But Megan invited her best friend and her husband and their 5-year-old son. When I pointed this out, she said, "Oh, well, Ryan is really well-behaved, and they're practically family." It's different. I told her that was ridiculous and that she couldn't say no kids, but then make exceptions. She said Sophie was too young and would ruin the aesthetic. That was when I told her, fine, if Sophie isn't invited, then neither are we. She acted completely fine with that and even said, honestly, that might be for the best. My mom was upset, but didn't want to get involved. So Ella and I made plans to spend Thanksgiving just the 3 of us. Fast forward to Thanksgiving week. Wednesday night around 9 p.m., Megan calls me absolutely panicking. Apparently, Jason's parents, who were driving in from another state, had gotten stuck in a snowstorm and weren't going to make it. That left 2 empty seats. And conveniently, she suddenly really wanted us there. I'll admit, I was irritated, but Ella said it might be nice to just go and keep the peace. I asked Megan if Sophie could come. She hesitated and said, well, I already set the table for adults only, but maybe she can stay in the living room with the iPad. I'll make her a little plate. That was it for me. I said, either we all come and sit at the table, or we don't come at all. She started crying, saying she'd already told everyone we were coming and didn't want to deal with people asking questions. After talking it over, Ella and I decided to go, without Sophie. My mom agreed to babysit last minute, and we thought maybe we could just get through the night peacefully. When we got there, it was clear Megan had gone all out. There were place cards, matching gold plates, candles, the works. She even had a seating chart taped to the fridge. When I looked for our names, I noticed something odd. There were 12 seats total, but ours weren't next to each other. I was seated at the far end next to Jason's co-workers, people I barely knew, and Ella was in the middle of the table next to Megan's friend. When I asked Megan about it, she said she wanted to mix people up to encourage conversation. I didn't love it, but fine. I tried to make small talk with the co-workers, but it was painfully awkward. At one point, one of them asked how old my kid was, and when I said 2, Megan loudly interjected from the other end. We decided to keep this dinner kid-free, to keep things sophisticated. That really rubbed me the wrong way. It felt like a dig. I kept quiet for the rest of the meal, but when dessert time came, Megan announced that there was a little surprise. She had made personalized pumpkin tarts with everyone's initials piped in frosting, except mine. Literally everyone had one except me. When I asked if there had been a mistake, she laughed and said, "Oh no, I just didn't make enough for everyone once we added you," and Ella last minute. Then she handed me a store-bought slice of pie. That was the final straw. I stood up and said, "You know what? I think I'll take this slice to go. Thanks for the hospitality." Megan got flustered and said, "Don't be dramatic. I worked so hard on this dinner." I replied, "Yeah, and it's pretty clear who you work hard for." I went to grab my coat, and as I was leaving, Megan yelled that I was being selfish and ruining her event again. I didn't respond, just left. Ella followed me out, and we went to my parents' place to pick up Sophie and ended up having pie with them instead. The next day, I woke up to a series of texts from Megan. She said I embarrassed her in front of her guests, that I could have just sat down and acted like an adult, and that she invited me out of kindness after I bailed on the family gathering. She even said I owed her an apology for making a scene. My parents are divided. My mom thinks Megan was completely out of line and that she treated us like afterthoughts. My dad thinks I should have just swallowed my pride and stayed, saying, "You know how your sister is." Now Megan isn't talking to me at all. She even posted photos of the dinner on social media, tagging everyone except me and Ella. One of the photos literally has my empty chair cropped out. Here's where it gets even more awkward. My family does Christmas together every year, and Megan already texted the group chat saying she's not sure if she's comfortable attending if I'm there because she doesn't want drama again. Ella says we did nothing wrong, and honestly, I agree, but part of me wonders if walking out made me look immature. Maybe I should have just gritted my teeth and endured it for a few hours. But another part of me feels like she treated us like props in her little dinner party and expected us to play along like nothing happened. So, Reddit, AITA for walking out of Thanksgiving and refusing to give up my seat after my sister basically uninvited us, then used us as filler guests when her plans fell apart. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's second wedding after she uninvited my husband from the first one. Okay, so I, 31F, have a younger sister, Emma, 28F. We've always been close, but Emma has always had a flair for drama. She's the type who makes every group chat about her and loves to post cryptic quotes when she's upset. Still, I've always supported her, even when she dated guys that everyone else could see were walking red flags in human form. Last year, Emma got engaged to Ryan, 32M. From the outside, he seemed nice enough, funny, charming, financially stable, good with kids, all that. But as the wedding planning ramped up, it was obvious that he and my husband, Tom, 33M, did not get along. They didn't fight exactly, but there was a tension there I couldn't quite pin down. For context, Tom is a mechanic. He's a quiet guy, not the most polished, but hard-working and kind. Ryan, on the other hand, works in finance and is very image-conscious. He once told Tom that he envied how relaxed he was about not needing to impress people. It was one of those backhanded comments that sounds like a compliment until you think about it. Anyway, about 2 weeks before Emma's wedding, she called me sounding awkward. She said Ryan didn't feel comfortable with Tom attending. I was shocked. I asked why, and she said it had to do with some tension between them that Ryan didn't want to escalate. I pressed her, and she finally admitted Ryan thought Tom didn't fit the vibe of the wedding. Apparently, Ryan told her he didn't want blue-collar energy at his black tie event. I was livid. I told Emma that was unbelievably snobby and that if my husband wasn't welcome, neither was I. She got defensive and said I was overreacting and that she just wanted a perfect day without stress. I told her good luck with that and hung up. We didn't go to the wedding. I sent a polite card and a gift, but that was it. She texted me the next day, saying she was heartbroken that I wasn't there, but I reminded her that she made her choice. We didn't speak for months after that. Fast forward 8 months, and guess what? Emma's marriage imploded. Apparently, Ryan had been cheating on her with one of his co-workers since before the wedding. She found out because the woman sent her screenshots of their messages after Ryan tried to ghost her. Emma was devastated, humiliated, the whole 9 yards. After the divorce, she moved back in with our parents for a while. I reached out to check on her, and slowly, we started talking again. I thought maybe this whole mess would make her reflect a bit, but she's still Emma. She kept saying how she was blinded by the aesthetic and too focused on appearances, which was true, but she said it like it was a cute personality quirk instead of a serious flaw. Now here's where things get complicated. A few weeks ago, she announced that she's engaged again to a guy named Ben, 30M, who she's been dating for less than a year. I've met him twice. He seems nice enough, kind of a golden retriever personality. Honestly, I like him better than Ryan already. Emma's planning another wedding, smaller this time, supposedly more authentic. Last week she called me and asked me to be her maid of honor again. I was surprised, but said I'd think about it. Then, a few days later, she sent me a message that made my blood boil. She said, "Hey, I want to give you a heads up that Tom isn't invited this time either. Ben and I just think it would be better to keep the guest list super intimate and avoid any possible weirdness." I called her immediately and asked what she meant by weirdness. She said Ben feels intimidated by Tom because he's so quiet it's hard to read him, and that he gives off serious energy. I honestly thought she was joking. When I realized she wasn't, I told her she was out of her mind. I reminded her how awful it was that she uninvited Tom last time, and now she's doing it again. I said it felt like she was punishing him for existing. She tried to argue that it wasn't personal, just about maintaining the right energy. I told her if she was so obsessed with energy, maybe she should hire a shaman, not plan a wedding. She got mad and said I was being unsupportive. I said no. I've been supportive through her bad decisions, her drama, and her heartbreak, but I draw the line at disrespecting my husband for no reason. I told her flat out that I wouldn't attend if Tom wasn't invited. She cried and said she really needed me there because she wanted family around her this time, and that it wouldn't be the same without me. I told her that's on her, not me. Our mom has since gotten involved. She's begging me to just go for the sake of peace, and says it's not a big deal if Tom sits one out. I said that's easy for her to say. Dad's invited. She keeps saying Emma's fragile and needs support, and that this wedding is her fresh start. Now the whole family is divided. My brother says Emma is being ridiculous and that I shouldn't give in, but Mom says I'm making things worse by holding a grudge. Emma texted me last night saying she forgives me for being upset, but she hopes I'll do the right thing and show up. I don't even know what that means anymore. I love my sister, but I can't keep letting her disrespect my husband like this. Tom says he's fine either way. He told me to go if I wanna, that he won't hold it against me. But honestly, I know it would hurt him deeply if I did. It's not about the wedding anymore. It's about what she's saying when she does this. That he's somehow beneath her, not good enough to be seen by her guests. That's not something I can just smile through for the sake of peace. Still, a part of me wonders if I'm being stubborn. Maybe I should go, just to keep the family from falling apart even more. Maybe this isn't the hill to die on. But another part of me feels like if I cave again, I'll be teaching Emma that she can keep crossing boundaries and I'll keep showing up anyway. So now, my phone's full of texts from family members taking sides, and I'm sitting here wondering if I'm the unreasonable one for refusing to attend what she's calling her do-over wedding. AITA for saying no? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding after she banned my 10-year-old daughter for being too mature. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Emily, 29F, who is getting married next spring. We've always been close, although our personalities are very different. Emily has always been the glamorous one, social, spontaneous, and very image-conscious. I'm more of the quiet mom type. I have a 10-year-old daughter, Lily, from my previous marriage, and she's honestly my world. She's polite, smart, and very well-behaved. The kind of kid adults usually say is wise beyond her years. When Emily got engaged last year, She immediately started planning a very extravagant wedding. Think vineyard venue, designer dress, live band, the whole thing. She made it clear early on that she wanted a child-free wedding, which I completely respected. I even told her that if she wanted a night that was strictly adults only, I could arrange childcare for Lily. But Emily told me not to worry, that Lily would be the only child invited because she was family and different. Fast forward to a few months ago when Emily started sending out the formal invitations. Mine came addressed only to me. No and family. No mention of Lily. I called Emily, assuming it was a mistake. She told me it wasn't, that after thinking more carefully, she decided Lily shouldn't come. Her reasoning floored me. Emily said Lily is too mature for her age and that she throws off the vibe of the kind of event she wants. I asked her what that even meant, and she said she didn't want a kid who talks like an adult and makes guests uncomfortable by being smarter than them. Apparently, during her engagement party, which Lily did attend briefly, Lily had a conversation with one of Emily's friends about marine biology because she's obsessed with ocean life. This friend later joked to Emily that her niece was basically a tiny scientist. Emily told me that made her realize Lily was the kind of child adults don't know how to act around. I thought she was joking, but she doubled down. She said she wants everyone to relax and drink and not feel like they have to censor themselves around a kid who corrects grammar. I reminded her that Lily didn't correct anyone. She just talks like she reads a lot. Emily said it doesn't matter. She doesn't want that energy at her wedding. I told her that was absurd and kind of cruel. She insisted it wasn't personal, but that she wants her wedding to be fun and carefree, and that she's allowed to make her own guest list. I agreed that she can, but I said if my daughter isn't welcome, I won't be going either. That's when things really exploded. She accused me of making her day about myself, saying I'm being dramatic and weaponizing motherhood. I told her I wasn't trying to guilt her. I just won't attend an event that excludes my child for such a shallow reason. My mom tried to mediate, but it didn't help. She thinks I should just go, saying it's one night, and that Emily is being a bridezilla, not a monster. My dad, on the other hand, supports me fully and said Emily's behavior was snobbish. Since then, the family has been divided. Emily told everyone I'm boycotting her wedding and trying to ruin it. Some of her friends, and even a few cousins, have sent me messages saying I should let her have her vision. One even wrote, "It's not about your daughter being bad. It's just that she's a buzzkill for drunk adults." That really stung. Lily doesn't even know she was uninvited. She just knows Aunt Emily's wedding is adults only now. She was actually excited to go before, because Emily had told her she could be a junior bridesmaid. Yes, you read that right. Emily originally asked her to be part of the wedding party. Now it's gone too. Emily replaced her with her fiancé's niece, who is 8. So, not really child-free, apparently, just Lily-free. When I pointed that out, Emily said it's different because the other girl acts her age and isn't intimidating. I don't even know how to process that. Intimidating? My daughter? She's 10. I told Emily I hope her wedding is everything she wants, but I'm not attending. She said she'd never forgive me for abandoning her on the biggest day of her life. My mom keeps saying I'm being stubborn and should just rise above it. But I can't shake how hurtful this is. It's not like Lily caused a scene or broke rules. She was punished for being articulate and curious. What makes it worse is that Emily has started telling mutual friends that I'm holding a grudge because Lily isn't the center of attention. I've never once implied that. I just think excluding a child because she's too well-spoken is beyond petty. Last week, Emily sent me one last message saying I'm still welcome if I change my mind, but Lily isn't. She said, "You can bring a +1 if you want," which just felt like a slap in the face. I didn't even respond. Now other relatives are chiming in, saying I should go just to keep the peace and that family shouldn't fight over weddings. Maybe they're right, but I feel like there's a line between compromise and self-respect. My husband, Lily's stepdad, says he's proud of me for standing up for Lily, but even he admits that this whole thing has made me look rigid to the rest of the family. So here I am, months away from my sister's wedding, with half the family thinking I'm overreacting and the other half quietly agreeing with me, but telling me to let it go. I don't want to ruin her wedding, and I don't want to make this bigger than it already is. but I also don't think I should reward her behavior by pretending it's okay. Part of me wonders if I'm being too sensitive. Maybe I should just go and treat it like any other adult-only event. But another part of me feels like if I cave, I'll be teaching Lily that it's fine for people, even family, to reject her for being herself. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she uninvited my daughter for being too mature. AITA for refusing to take down the security cameras in my house after my sister moved in with her baby. So, for some background, I, 32F, bought a small 3-bedroom house about 4 years ago. I live alone, and I'm a bit of a homebody. After a really nasty break-in when I was in college, I became extremely cautious about security. I have a full system installed, door and window sensors, cameras inside and out, living room, hallway, kitchen, and front door area. No cameras in private spaces like bedrooms or bathrooms, obviously. Recently, my younger sister, Emma, 27F, hit a rough patch. Her boyfriend bailed after finding out she was pregnant, and she ended up having her baby, now 4 months old, alone. She couldn't afford rent anymore and asked if she could stay with me for a while. I said yes, but made it clear it would be temporary, maybe 6 months tops, until she could save up for her own place. Everything was fine for the first few weeks. The baby cried a lot at night, which was fine. I expected that, but the tension started over the cameras. One morning, she was sitting in the kitchen looking upset and said, "I saw one of those little red lights blinking in the corner last night. Are there cameras in here?" I told her yes, that I have security cameras in common areas. I explained that they've been here since I moved in. They're mostly for peace of mind, and I don't watch them constantly. They only record when motion is detected. She looked horrified and said, "You mean you're recording me and my baby?" I tried to reassure her it wasn't personal. The cameras are there for safety. Someone had once tried to steal packages off my porch, and they caught it. Plus, since the baby gear was expensive, I thought she'd appreciate the added protection. But she said she felt violated and couldn't relax knowing she was being watched all the time. I told her I could turn off motion detection in the living room during certain hours if it helped, but I wasn't removing the cameras altogether. That wasn't enough for her. She said she wanted them completely off or covered with something. Here's where it got ugly. A week later, I noticed on the app that 2 of my cameras had gone offline. I checked the footage. It stopped right around 2 p.m. that day. When I got home, I found that Emma had literally covered the cameras with towels and painter's tape. I confronted her, and she said she didn't see what the big deal was. She said, "It's my baby's privacy. You can live without cameras for a few months." I told her she had crossed a line. This is my house, my property, and she doesn't get to tamper with my stuff. I told her if she didn't like it, she could start looking for other arrangements. She called me controlling and said I was prioritizing my paranoid obsession over her comfort. For a few days, things were tense but quiet. Then, when I came home one afternoon, I found the baby's playmat spread out in the living room, the cameras uncovered, and one of them had been unplugged entirely. That's when I lost it. I told her I couldn't live like this, and if she kept messing with my cameras, she'd have to move out. She started crying and accused me of kicking a single mother onto the street. She called our mom, who took her side immediately. Mom said, "You don't need cameras inside your house when it's just family. It's creepy." I tried to explain that this isn't about spying. It's about feeling safe in my own home. I pointed out that the cameras had been there long before Emma came, and that I was already compromising by offering to limit them. But now I feel like everyone in my family thinks I'm heartless. My mom even said she'd take Emma in, but her place is tiny, and Emma doesn't want to move again with the baby. Last night, Emma gave me an ultimatum. Either take the cameras down, or she'll find somewhere else to go. I told her I respect her choice, but I'm not removing my security system. She packed up some of her things, but hasn't actually left yet. Now my family group chat is full of messages about how cold I am and how I'm choosing gadgets over family. My older brother said I'm technically right, but morally wrong. I genuinely don't think I'm in the wrong here. I don't check the footage unless there's an alert. I even gave her access to the camera app, so she could see that nothing weird was being recorded. I thought that was a fair middle ground. But now, she barely talks to me. She keeps the baby in her room almost all day and avoids the common areas. The atmosphere is awful. I can tell she feels trapped and judged, even though I've tried to reassure her. Part of me wonders if I'm being too rigid. Maybe I should have taken down the cameras temporarily to make her feel safe. But another part of me feels like that would mean giving up my sense of security in my own home. I work hard for this house, and these systems are part of what helps me sleep at night. The argument hit a peak 2 nights ago. The baby was crying at 3 a.m., and I went to check if Emma needed anything. She snapped at me and said, "Don't pretend to care when you're literally watching us through your stupid cameras." I told her I wasn't watching. I had just heard the crying. She called me a liar. At that point, I told her maybe it's best if she moves in with Mom for a while, since this situation clearly isn't working. She said she would, but she hasn't done anything about it yet. Now I'm sitting here, half expecting her to move out any day and half feeling guilty about it. My coworkers think I'm being reasonable. They say it's my home, my rules. But my mom and sister keep painting me as this cold-hearted person who doesn't care about family. So, AITA for refusing to take down the cameras in my house, even though my sister says it makes her uncomfortable? Because honestly, I feel like no matter what I do, I lose. If I take them down, I'll be anxious in my own home. If I keep them up, I'm the villain who spies on her sister. And maybe the part that hurts the most is that I genuinely wanted to help her. I offered her a safe place when she had nowhere to go, and somehow that's turned into me being the bad guy. I didn't think a couple of cameras could make someone hate me, but apparently they can. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding after she said my son wasn't actually family. So, my sister Lily, 29F, is getting married next spring to her fiancé Tom, 31M. I'm 33F, her older sister, and we've always had a somewhat rocky relationship. We're not enemies or anything, but she's always been more self-centered, dramatic, and image-focused, while I'm a little more laid-back and family-oriented. I have a 7-year-old son, Ben, with my husband, 34M. When Lily announced her engagement, she was over the moon. I was genuinely happy for her and even offered to help with wedding planning. She said she wanted something elegant, mature, and Instagram-worthy. That was fine until she mentioned it was going to be a child-free wedding. I didn't mind that all at first. I understand that some people don't want kids running around, and I respect that. Fast forward a few months. Lily started planning all these pre-wedding events: engagement party, bridal shower, dress shopping trips, bachelorette weekend, etc. She asked me to be a bridesmaid, and I agreed. I try to be involved and supportive, even though she has been kind of a bridezilla about every detail. Then came the issue that started all this drama. A few weeks ago, Lily called to discuss wedding invitations. She told me she was sending mine soon, but wanted to clarify that my invitation would be for just me and my husband, not Ben. I reminded her that I already knew it was a child-free event and that we had planned to get a sitter. But then she said, "Oh no, it's not just about the wedding ceremony or reception. He's not invited to any part of the weekend, not even the family brunch or rehearsal dinner. Those are all adult only." I was taken aback because every other family member's kids, including our cousin's children, were invited to the family brunch. I asked why Ben was excluded if other kids were allowed. Lily said they're part of Tom's family and his nieces and nephews are going to be in the wedding photos. It would just look inconsistent to have random kids on my side there too. I said, "He's not random. He's your nephew." She sighed and said, "I know, but it's different. You had him so young, and he's just not part of the aesthetic. Tom, and I want a clean, mature vibe for our pictures, not a bunch of kids running around." I honestly thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She said they wanted the photos to be refined, and since the brunch would be the day after the wedding, they wanted to keep the whole weekend cohesive. That's when I told her I didn't feel comfortable participating if my son was being excluded for superficial reasons. I said, "If you don't want kids there, that's one thing, but excluding just one child, your own nephew, because he doesn't fit your aesthetic is cruel." She accused me of making everything about myself and said I was trying to guilt her. She told me I was overreacting and that it was just one weekend. After that, I decided I wasn't going to the wedding. I told her I wouldn't feel right standing next to her as a bridesmaid when she's treating my child like an inconvenience. My parents got involved soon after because, of course, she called them crying, saying I was ruining her wedding and being vindictive. My mom tried to play peacemaker, but even she admitted that what Lily said about the aesthetic was hurtful. My dad, however, thinks I should suck it up and go for the sake of family peace. Now the entire family is divided. Some of our relatives think Lily was wrong and shallow, while others think I'm making a big deal out of something small. What's worse is that Lily's wedding planner reached out to me last week, apparently at Lily's request, to confirm if I was officially stepping down as a bridesmaid so they could assign my role to someone else. I said yes. Lily then texted me a long message about how I was embarrassing her by pulling out so late in the process and that people would assume there was drama. I told her maybe they'd assume that because there was drama and she had caused it. Now she's been posting passive-aggressive things on social media about fake supportive family and people who can't be happy for others. My husband fully supports me, but even he admitted it's sad because Ben loves his aunt and doesn't understand why we're not going. Ben keeps asking if he did something wrong. It broke my heart. Then last weekend, my mom tried one last time to mediate. She said Lily was willing to compromise by allowing Ben to come to the brunch for an hour, but only if he sits at the kids' table with Tom's nieces. Apparently, she still doesn't want him in any pictures because it messes with the visual balance. I told my mom that was insulting. My child isn't a prop she can position out of frame for aesthetics. If she can't treat him like family, then she doesn't deserve our presence at her big day. Since then, things have gone from bad to worse. Lily told everyone I hate her fiancé, not true, and that I'm trying to steal attention. She even uninvited my husband from the wedding as well, saying, "If your wife can't support me, neither can you." At this point, I'm done. I don't want to fight, but I also don't want to condone her behavior by showing up. My parents have begged me to reconsider because it'll look bad if I'm absent, but honestly, I think the only thing that looks bad is how she's treating her own nephew. Now the wedding is a few months away, and the tension is still awful. My mom has hinted that Lily regrets some things, but is too proud to apologize. I'm not sure whether to reach out or let it go. I don't want to teach my son that people can treat him poorly just because they care more about their social image than their family. Part of me wonders if I should have just swallowed my pride and gone, for the sake of peace for my parents, for avoiding drama. But the other part of me feels like showing up after all that would make me look spineless, like I'm okay with my sister seeing my son as a decorative flaw instead of a human being. So here I am, months of family tension later, wondering if I did the right thing. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding after she said my son wasn't really family? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding after she said my son wasn't really family? So, for context, I, 34F, have a 9-year-old son, Dylan, from a previous relationship. I married my husband, Aaron, 36M, 3 years ago, and we've been raising Dylan together. Aaron treats Dylan like his own. They're super close, and Dylan even calls him dad. My younger sister, Emily, 29F, is getting married next spring to her fiancé, Mark, 31M. She's always been the golden child in our family, the one who did everything right. Straight A student, college graduate, high-paying job, huge social circle, the works. I love her, but she's intense. Everything she does has to be picture perfect, like her Instagram is basically a magazine layout. Anyway, she announced earlier this year that she and Mark are having a child-free wedding. Totally fine, their choice. I told her I understood and asked if that included the entire event or just the ceremony/reception. She said no children at all, including the rehearsal dinner and the day after brunch. I didn't argue, but a few weeks later, Emily called me and said she wanted Dylan to be her ring bearer. I reminded her of the no kids rule, and she said it was different because the ceremony would look better if there was a cute little boy in a tiny suit. I said I'd have to think about it, because it felt weird to make an exception only when it benefited her aesthetics. Still, Dylan was excited when he heard about it, so I eventually agreed. We bought him a nice little suit, and he practiced walking down the hallway with a pillow ring. He was so proud. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago. Emily hosted a brunch for the bridal party at her place. I went, but Aaron stayed home with Dylan because, again, no kids allowed. During brunch, Emily started showing everyone a slideshow of her wedding inspiration. It was all very polished, minimalist decor, neutral tones, perfectly staged photos. Then someone asked her who the ring bearer was, and she said, "Oh, my nephew Dylan. He's going to look adorable." One of her bridesmaids asked if he was her only nephew, and Emily laughed and said, "Technically, yes, but he's not really family. He's more like my sister's situation." The whole table went silent. I asked what she meant, and she looked awkward for a second before saying, "I mean, he's not blood related. Like, obviously I love him because he's your kid, but he's not really part of the family line, you know?" I told her that was a really rude thing to say, and she brushed it off, saying I was being oversensitive and that she didn't mean it in a bad way. She just wanted to clarify, because her future in-laws had been asking about family ties. I left soon after, completely pissed. When I got home, I told Aaron what happened, and he was livid. He said there was no way our son was going to be part of a wedding where the bride didn't even consider him real family. I texted Emily and told her Dylan wouldn't be attending or participating in the wedding. She freaked out. She said I was punishing her for an innocent comment and that now her whole vision was ruined because she'd already planned a procession around having a ring bearer. I told her maybe she should have thought about that before saying something so cruel. Since then, it's been nonstop drama. My parents called and said I was being unreasonable, that Emily didn't mean it that way. My dad actually said, she can be thoughtless sometimes, just let it go for the sake of family harmony. But Aaron won't budge, and honestly, neither will I. Dylan overheard us talking one night and asked why he couldn't be in the wedding anymore. I told him gently that Aunt Emily said something unkind and that it wasn't his fault. He cried and asked if she didn't like him anymore. That broke me. Now Emily's been posting vague stuff on social media about family members who make everything about themselves and how you can't make people happy no matter what you do. Some mutual friends have reached out, saying I should apologize because I'm ruining her big day over a misunderstanding. But here's the thing. This isn't the first time she's made comments like that. When Aaron and I got married, she told a cousin that she was so happy Aaron was willing to take on someone else's kid. When Dylan made her a handmade Christmas card, she laughed and said, "That's cute, but it's not like he's really my nephew." I've let those things go in the past to avoid conflict, but this time it felt like a line was crossed. She can't use my son as a prop for her perfect wedding aesthetic and then talk about him like he's disposable. The last straw came a few days ago when my mom called and said Emily wanted me to at least attend the ceremony without Dylan. I told her I wasn't comfortable doing that. My mom said, "You're being selfish. This is your sister's once-in-a-lifetime day." I told her that if Emily truly wanted me there, she wouldn't have disrespected my child. Now the family group chat is a mess. My brother, who lives out of state, sided with me, saying that what Emily said was cruel and that she needed to apologize. My parents are furious with him too. They think he's encouraging division. Emily texted me yesterday with this long message, saying she was hurt that I'm trying to make her look like a bad person. She said she's under a lot of stress and didn't mean to insult Dylan. She just misspoke. She ended it by saying, "If you can't move past this for the sake of family, maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding at all." So I told her, okay, we won't. Now my mom says she's heartbroken and that my absence is going to cause irreparable damage. She also said Emily cried for hours and that I should be the bigger person. Aaron says he's proud of me for standing firm. But I keep second-guessing myself because I don't want to be the reason my family falls apart. At the same time, I don't want to teach Dylan that people can insult him and will still show up smiling for them. So here I am, stuck between wanting to keep the peace and wanting to protect my son from being treated like he's less than. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she said my son wasn't really family? AITA for refusing to give up my seat at my father's funeral to my stepbrother's girlfriend who claimed she was family too? So this happened 2 weeks ago, and my family is still arguing about it. My dad passed away unexpectedly at 58. He had a heart attack at work, and everything since then has been a blur. For context, my parents divorced when I was 10. I'm now 27. My dad remarried when I was 14 to Carla, who had a son, Evan, who's now 25. Evan and I were never close. He lived with us part-time, and he always made it clear he thought I was some spoiled only child type. I didn't mind him much, but after our parents got married, he would constantly tell me I wasn't his sister and that his mom's marriage to my dad was just a temporary thing. Ironically, they ended up staying married until my dad's death, so that temporary thing lasted 13 years. My dad and I were close, but he was the kind of guy who hated conflict. So when Evan and I had issues, Dad would just say, "Try to get along for my sake." We were civil at best. Now, fast forward to the funeral. My stepmother and I were the main ones planning it since my dad didn't leave many instructions. We booked a church that could hold about 150 people. We arranged seating in the front 2 rows for immediate family. Me, Carla, and my aunt, dad's sister. Evan said he was bringing his girlfriend, Sophie. They'd been together for about 8 months. I'd only met her once, briefly. Carla told me Sophie would probably sit near the family section since she was supporting Evan. I didn't think that was an issue, as long as she didn't take an immediate family seat. The day of the funeral was rough. The church was full. People from Dad's work, old friends, extended family. I got there early and sat in the front row with Carla on my left and my aunt on my right. There were a few open seats next to Carla for Evan and whoever he brought. But when Evan arrived, he came with Sophie and her parents. Apparently, they had all come to support him. Sophie's mom and dad came up to the ushers asking where family should sit. And when they were directed to general seating, Sophie made a scene saying they were with the son. Then, as the service was about to begin, Sophie came down the aisle, stopped in front of me, and said, "Hey, could you scoot down? I need to sit next to Evan." I was kind of shocked. I said quietly, "This row's for immediate family. There's space behind us." She looked offended and said, "I'm his partner, which makes me family. He needs me right now." Evan was standing behind her, avoiding eye contact. Carla turned around and said, "Honey, maybe sit with your parents? There's not enough space up here." But Sophie crossed her arms and said, "I'm not sitting in the back like a stranger. I'm here for him." Everyone around us was watching. It was so awkward. I told her, "There's literally no room. I'm not moving." Then she whispered, "Wow, Cole." Eventually, one of the ushers gently guided her to the row behind us. She sat there sulking the entire service. I tried to ignore it and focus on Dad's eulogy, but it definitely ruined part of the experience. Afterward, when people were gathering outside, Evan blew up at me. He said, "You couldn't just move one seat over? You had to make a scene." I told him, "You brought 4 extra people and expected everyone to accommodate you. You didn't even ask beforehand." He said Sophie was crying because she felt disrespected and that Dad would have wanted everyone to feel welcome. I replied, "Dad would have wanted his funeral not to turn into a soap opera." Carla stepped in and told both of us to stop. But later that evening, she texted me saying I could have just moved down 1 seat and avoided drama. I told her I wasn't the one who created it. The reserved seats were clear, and Sophie could have sat directly behind us, which she did anyway. Since then, my extended family has taken sides. My aunt thinks I did the right thing, saying funerals aren't for girlfriends of less than a year. But Carla and Evan are upset, saying I made a grieving moment harder. What's really been bothering me is that a few people have said I was territorial and trying to play gatekeeper over Dad's funeral. But that's not how I saw it. I was trying to honor the structure we had agreed on. It wasn't about hierarchy. It was about space and respect. To make it worse, Sophie posted some cryptic Instagram story the next day saying, "Sometimes grief brings out people's true colors," with a black heart emoji. Of course, mutual friends saw it and messaged me asking what happened. I ignored it, but it made me furious. I get that she wanted to comfort Evan, but to me, showing up with your whole family to someone else's funeral and then demanding a front row seat is entitled behavior. She barely knew my dad. She met him once at a barbecue this past summer, where she called him sir and asked if he had Wi-Fi for her to connect to. That's the extent of their relationship. Carla keeps saying I should reach out to Sophie to smooth things over, but honestly, I don't see why I should. I didn't insult her, raise my voice, or cause a scene. I just refused to give up my seat that was reserved for immediate family. Still, I can't help wondering if I should have just moved and avoided all the conflict. Maybe I was too rigid about the seating plan. Maybe I made things harder on a day that was already painful for everyone. But when I replay it in my head, all I can remember is standing there watching her march down the aisle in heels, demanding I move, while my father's photo sat up front by the coffin. And I think, no, that wasn't the time for her to make it about herself. The weirdest part? After the funeral, Sophie's mom came up to me and said, "You handled that poorly." She was just trying to support him. I didn't even respond. I just walked away. Now it's been 2 weeks, and Evan still hasn't spoken to me. Carla says she hopes we can put this behind us, but it's clear she blames me. My aunt told me to give it time. That grief makes people act irrationally. I miss my dad. He'd hate to see us fighting over something as stupid as seating. But I can't shake the feeling that Sophie used his funeral to assert some weird dominance, and everyone's acting like I'm the villain for not letting her. So, AITA for refusing to give up my seat at my father's funeral to my stepbrother's girlfriend, who said she was family too? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to babysit my sister's kids after she jokingly said, "I'm too selfish to be a mother." So I, 29F, have always been the reliable one in my family. My older sister, Lydia, 34F, has 3 kids, 9M, 6F, and 3F. She and her husband both work full-time, and since they live close by, I've often been the one to pick up the slack. I've babysat countless times, helped with school projects, run errands, and even taken the kids to doctor's appointments when Lydia was too busy. I don't have children of my own. I never really wanted them, to be honest. I like kids, but I love my independence. I've worked hard to build a stable life. I have a good job, I travel when I want, and I'm in a long-term relationship with my boyfriend, Sam, 30M, who also doesn't want kids. My family knows this and has always treated it as a phase I'll grow out of. The issue started a few weeks ago at a family dinner. It was my dad's birthday, and everyone was there. My parents, Lydia and her family, my younger brother and me. We were all sitting around after dinner, talking about plans for the holidays. Lydia asked if I'd be available to watch her kids for a few days so she and her husband could take a short trip. She made it sound casual, but I knew from experience that a few days meant at least a week. I told her I couldn't. Work has been hectic lately, and I'm preparing for a big project deadline. I also had already planned a small getaway with Sam for that same week, something I told everyone about 2 months prior. Lydia rolled her eyes and said, "You can always work remotely, and Sam won't mind. You guys don't have kids or responsibilities anyway." I laughed and said, "Just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I don't have responsibilities." Then she smirked and said, "Oh, come on. You wouldn't understand. You're too selfish to be a mom. Some people just aren't cut out for that kind of sacrifice." The table went quiet. My dad frowned. My mom gave her that warning look she gives when someone's being rude, but Lydia just kept eating like nothing happened. I was stunned. I said, "Wow, that was uncalled for." She shrugged and said, "It's not an insult. It's just true. You always make everything about your schedule and your needs. I'm just saying, not everyone is meant to be nurturing." I told her that was incredibly disrespectful, especially considering how often I've helped with her kids. I reminded her that she's leaned on me dozens of times and that I've always been there. She scoffed and said, "You babysit sometimes, big deal. That doesn't make you motherly. You like the fun, aunt, but let's be real. You don't have the patience or the heart for motherhood." I got up and left early because I was honestly on the verge of tears. My mom texted me later that night saying Lydia felt bad and that she didn't mean it that way. But Lydia herself didn't apologize. A few days later, she called me, not to apologize, but to ask if I'd reconsider babysitting the kids during her trip. I told her flat out no. She said she already told her husband I'd do it, and that it would be unfair for her to cancel their plans now. I told her she should have thought about that before insulting me. She laughed like I was being childish and said, "You're really going to hold a grudge over one little comment? Don't be so sensitive." I told her that calling someone too selfish to be a mother isn't a little comment. It's cruel, and I'm done bending over backward for someone who clearly doesn't respect me. Since then, it's become a full-blown family drama. Lydia has been telling everyone that I'm punishing her and taking out on the kids. My mom says I should be the bigger person, that Lydia was just stressed, and that the kids shouldn't suffer because of adult disagreements. My dad, on the other hand, told me privately that he's proud of me for setting boundaries, but that I should expect some fallout. And fallout there has been. Lydia has been passive-aggressive on social media, posting stuff like some people talk about being family-oriented but disappear when you need them most. My aunt even called me to say I should let it go because family is everything. Sam's been supportive, but even he's getting frustrated because my phone hasn't stopped buzzing with guilt trips. He told me I've been too nice for too long, and maybe Lydia's gotten used to treating me like a built-in nanny. I'm starting to second-guess myself, though. I do love my nieces and nephew, and it breaks my heart that they might be disappointed. But at the same time, I feel like I've been taken for granted for years. I've missed work meetings, canceled plans, and even spent my own money on stuff for her kids because it takes a village. The more I think about it, the more I realize Lydia never thanks me. She just expects it. When I said no this time, she didn't even ask why or if I was okay. She just assumed I'd do it. My mom keeps insisting that Lydia didn't mean her comment, that she's just tired, and that motherhood changes your sense of humor. But I can't shake how deeply that comment cut me. Being child-free doesn't make me selfish, and I'm sick of having to prove my worth by being available for everyone else. The trip Lydia wanted to take starts next week, and she's now saying she might have to cancel it because of me. My mom called again today and said, "Can't you just do this one last favor to keep the peace?" But it's never the last favor. There's always another one. I told her no again, and now everyone's acting like I've declared war on the family. My dad's staying neutral publicly, but I can tell he's annoyed at the drama. My brother texted me, saying Lydia's been ranting that I only care about myself, and that no man will ever want to marry someone so self-centered. That one made me laugh, because Sam and I are happier than ever. We just don't want kids. I know family relationships are complicated, and I don't want to be cruel. But I also don't think I should keep helping someone who clearly thinks I'm beneath her because I made a different life choice. Part of me wonders if I overreacted. Maybe I should have just brushed it off. But another part of me feels like if I don't draw a line now, Lydia will keep walking all over me forever. So, AITA for refusing to babysit after my sister called me selfish? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house even though I have extra rooms? So I, 33F, bought my first home about 2 years ago. It's a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet suburb. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I worked really hard to get here. I worked 2 jobs in my 20s, saved like crazy, and finally managed to buy a home after years of renting. It's honestly been one of the biggest accomplishments of my life. My sister, Rachel, 36F, has always had a rougher time. She got married young, had 3 kids before she turned 25, and has been on and off with her husband, Darren, for years. They've both had unstable jobs, money problems, and a lot of drama that tends to spill over into everyone else's lives. I've helped them many times over the years, covering rent, sending money for school supplies, even paying off a utility bill or 2 when they were in danger of being shut off. About 3 months ago, Rachel and Darren officially split again, apparently for good this time. She called me in tears, saying she had nowhere to go. Their lease was up, Darren wasn't paying his share, and she couldn't afford the rent alone. She asked if she and the kids, ages 11, 9, and 6, could stay with me for a while until she got back on her feet. Now, my house has 3 bedrooms, my room, a guest room, and a small office that I use for my remote job. I told her I needed to think about it, because having 4 extra people, 3 of them kids, would be a huge change. I work from home full-time and value my peace and quiet. I've lived alone for years, and I'm not used to chaos or constant noise. When I told her that I wasn't sure it would work, she got upset and said family helps family, and that I owed her because she helped me years ago when I needed a place to crash after college. To be fair, that's true. After I graduated, I stayed with her and Darren for about 3 months until I found a job in my own apartment. But back then, I paid rent, bought groceries, and even helped with babysitting. It wasn't a free ride. I told her I was happy to help in other ways, like paying her first month's rent somewhere, helping her find housing assistance, or watching the kids occasionally, but that I couldn't have them move in. She started crying and accused me of being selfish, saying that I had more than enough space and that my precious home office wasn't as important as 3 kids having a roof over their heads. Then she called our mom, who called me the next day to guilt-trip me further. Mom said Rachel was in crisis and that I should open my home for family. I asked Mom why Rachel couldn't stay with her, and Mom said she didn't have room because she and her husband live in a small condo. For context, it's a 2-bedroom condo with a guest room that's currently being used as a sewing room, so she technically does have space. Rachel's been staying with a friend since then, but things are getting tense. The friend apparently wants her to move out soon, and Rachel texted me again last week, saying she can't believe I'm letting my niece and nephews go homeless while I sit alone in a house built for a family. I try to explain that my home isn't equipped for kids. It's not child-proof, and I don't have the energy or emotional bandwidth to handle 3 kids full-time while working 50-plus hours a week. She said I'm just making excuses because I don't like her kids, which isn't true. I love them, but I also know that living together would destroy my sanity. To make matters worse, my mom has now told some extended family, and people have started messaging me saying I'm being cruel. My aunt even said, "You'll regret it if something bad happens to those kids, and you could have prevented it." Here's where I might be the asshole. I can technically afford to take them in, and I do have the physical space. It would just massively disrupt my life. Part of me feels selfish because, yes, my house is comfortable and quiet and safe, exactly the kind of place kids should be in. But another part of me feels like if I let her move in, it'll never just be for a while. Rachel has a history of overstaying boundaries, and I know from experience that once she's in, it'll be almost impossible to get her out without a huge family blow-up. I've even thought about what would happen if I agreed. The kids would need space. 1 bedroom probably wouldn't be enough for 3 of them. They'd have to use the guest room and likely the office, which means I'd lose my workspace. Rachel doesn't drive, so I'd end up helping with school runs and errands. I'd be paying more for food, utilities, and possibly even school supplies because Rachel's job situation is unstable. I talked to a friend about it, and she said it's completely fair to protect my boundaries. But my mom and Rachel keep framing it like I'm choosing comfort over compassion, and it's really getting to me. Last night, Rachel sent me a long text saying she finally understands that I only care about appearances and not about family. She said she hopes I never need help because karma always comes around. Now I feel awful. Maybe I could handle it for a few months. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad as I think. But another part of me knows that if I cave now, I'll resent her and the kid for turning my safe space into chaos. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in, even though I technically have a room. AITA for refusing to give up my seat at my own father's wedding reception. So, this all blew up a few weeks ago, but the fallout is still ongoing, and I honestly don't know if I handled it poorly or if my dad and his new wife are just being ridiculous. For context, I'm 27F, and my dad, 56M, recently got married to his new wife, Kim, 41F. My mom and dad divorced when I was 10, mostly because my dad had what he calls an emotional affair that later turned into his relationship with Kim. My mom was devastated at the time, but she's moved on and is remarried now. I've maintained an okay relationship with my dad, but it's always been a bit strained because of how his relationship with Kim started. When Dad told me they were finally getting married after being together for over a decade, I was happy for him, genuinely. I even offered to help with the planning, but Kim declined, saying she wanted a fresh start and to keep things drama-free. That was fine by me. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. I arrived early, brought a thoughtful gift, and tried to be polite to everyone. Kim's side of the family is intense. They're very opinionated, loud, and love to gossip. I was doing my best to blend in and avoid awkward conversations about how young Kim looks for her age or how happy my dad seems now. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give them that. The issue started at the reception. There was a formal seating chart, and when I got to my assigned table, I realized I'd been placed at the very back of the room, literally the last table, far from the head table where my dad and Kim were seated. I was next to some distant relatives of Kim that I'd never met before. Meanwhile, my dad's siblings, their spouses, and even his co-workers were sitting closer. I wasn't angry, just a little hurt. I'm his only child, and it stung to be so far away. I figured maybe it was an oversight, so I quietly went to my dad during cocktail hour and asked if the seating was intentional. He looked uncomfortable and said, "Kim thought it would be better if her family was closer to us, just for balance." I told him I understood, but it still hurt. He promised he'd come talk to me later. Dinner starts, and there's a long line for the buffet. After I got my plate, I was walking back to my table when Kim's teenage niece, who was seated up front, said she wanted to go dance but didn't want to leave her phone and purse unattended. She asked if I could watch them. I laughed and said sure, but when she left, I noticed her table had an empty seat. It was near the front, prime real estate. After a few minutes, a server came by and asked if I wanted my wine refill. I said yes, and without really thinking it through, sat down in the empty chair to get out of the way of people moving around. I was just sitting quietly, eating, scrolling through photos from the ceremony. Then my dad came by, looked surprised, and said, "Oh, you moved up." I explained that it wasn't intentional, that I was just watching the niece's stuff. He chuckled awkwardly and walked off. A few minutes later, Kim came over. She had this tight smile and said, "Hey, that's actually Emily's seat, so if you don't mind moving back to your table." I said, "Oh, sure, but she asked me to watch her things." Kim said, "I can keep an eye on them. You should really be at your assigned seat. It's just for the photos." Something in her tone just made me freeze. It wasn't polite. It was like she was scolding a child. I said, "Kim, I'm not trying to cause trouble. It just felt weird to be so far back. I'm Dad's daughter." Her smile vanished. She said, "You're making this about you. It's our day, and I need everyone to follow the plan." I was embarrassed, but I stood up and said, "Fine," and went back to my original table. Everyone there had clearly noticed something happened, and I could feel people staring. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the humiliation. Later that night, when the dancing started, I didn't feel like joining in. My dad eventually came over again and asked why I wasn't having fun. I told him I just felt excluded and humiliated earlier. He sighed and said, "Kim didn't mean anything by it. You know how she gets when she's stressed." I told him it wasn't just about that. It was the whole setup. The seating, the tone, the feeling like I wasn't part of the family. He said, "Come on, don't make a scene. You know this means a lot to me." I didn't yell or cry, but I said, "I think I'm going to head home early." He tried to stop me, saying it would look bad, but I left anyway. The next day, I got a long text from Kim saying I disrespected their wedding and made her family uncomfortable by refusing to sit where I was assigned and storming out dramatically. I replied that I didn't storm out, I just didn't feel welcome. She said if I really care about my dad, I would have kept my attitude in check for one night. Now my dad is upset with me because Kim is apparently still angry. He says I should apologize to smooth things over. I said I'd apologize if she apologized first for embarrassing me. He said that wasn't going to happen because it's easier for you to be the bigger person. My mom thinks I did nothing wrong and that Kim deliberately sidelined me. My friends are split. Some think I should have just let it go because weddings are stressful, while others say Kim was power tripping. I don't think I was disrespectful. I didn't argue loudly or make a scene. I just didn't want to sit in the corner like some distant acquaintance at my own father's wedding. Now it's been weeks, and Kim still hasn't reached out. My dad texted me asking if I'll come over for Thanksgiving if everyone can behave like adults. I told him I'd think about it. So, AITA for refusing to give up my seat at my dad's wedding reception and leaving early after feeling disrespected. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after he embarrassed me in front of my entire extended family. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emma, 24F, who has been dating her boyfriend, Matt, 26M, for about a year. For the most part, things between us were fine. I'm closer to my parents and siblings than anyone else in my family, and we have this family tradition of hosting a big holiday dinner at my parents' house. Everyone gathers, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole extended gang. This year, my parents asked if I would host Thanksgiving at my place since they're traveling, and I happily agreed. Hosting is stressful, but I love doing it, and I thought it would be a good way to include Matt in the family. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, Emma asked if Matt could stay over in my apartment the night before the dinner so he wouldn't have to wake up at 4 a.m. to drive in from out of town. I was hesitant, but said yes. I've hosted guests before, but this felt different because Matt and I have never really clicked. He's generally polite in small doses, but I found him obnoxious and a little arrogant at times. I tried to ignore that and accommodate Emma's request. The night before Thanksgiving, they arrived around 7 p.m. I offered them a drink, showed them where they could crash in my guest room, and tried to be as welcoming as possible. Things started okay, but then we sat down in the living room to chat a bit. I was showing them some old family photo albums, trying to start some light conversation. That's when Matt, who had been drinking, decided to comment on everything. He started laughing at family photos, making jokes about our relatives' appearances, and then he made a comment about my weight. I froze. I've struggled with my weight for years, and I've never felt comfortable around people who make fun of it. Emma tried to hush him, but he just laughed and kept going. He started pointing out differences between me and Emma, comparing our outfits, and even insinuating that Emma was more successful because of some small achievements. I was mortified and tried to change the subject, but he kept interrupting. Then it escalated. He decided to help me in the kitchen by giving me cooking tips, which turned into a full-on lecture about how I should plan the Thanksgiving menu better and not overcook the turkey like last year. Keep in mind, this is the first time I'm hosting the meal on my own, and I spent hours researching recipes, buying ingredients, and planning every detail. I felt humiliated in front of Emma, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Eventually, I excused myself to my bedroom to calm down. I texted Emma to ask her to talk to him, but she said she was too stressed and didn't want to argue with him. I spent the rest of the night in my room, barely sleeping, dreading the next day. Thanksgiving morning came, and I made the decision that Matt would not be welcome in my home. I explained to Emma that while I love her and want her to be happy, I could not host someone who disrespected me in my own home. I told her she could attend the dinner, but Matt could not. Emma was furious. She accused me of overreacting, saying it was just a joke and that I should be more forgiving. I stuck to my decision. Matt showed up anyway, uninvited, and Emma tried to smuggle him into the kitchen while I was finishing some last-minute cooking. I stopped her at the door and told her firmly that he had to leave. Matt started arguing with me, raising his voice and calling me overly sensitive and controlling. At that point, I had enough and called Emma's fiancé's parents, who were also visiting, to mediate. They sided with me, saying Matt's behavior was unacceptable. Emma ended up leaving with Matt in a huff. The dinner went smoothly after that, but it left a weird tension. Since then, Emma has barely spoken to me and keeps making passive-aggressive comments about family drama whenever I bring up future gatherings. Our parents are frustrated but understand my position, saying they would have done the same in my shoes. A few cousins even texted me privately afterward to say they thought I handled it well and that Matt's behavior was inappropriate. Now, Emma is asking me to reconsider and let Matt attend family events in the future, claiming that if I don't, I'm being selfish and ruining her relationship. I feel torn because I love my sister, but I also feel like setting boundaries is necessary. I don't want to be around someone who humiliates me or makes me feel unsafe in my own home. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house and attend Thanksgiving after he embarrassed me. Character count, 6,519. If you want, I can draft another one that's even longer, closer to 7,000 characters, with a more complicated chain of events and multiple perspectives, which often perform better for viral AITA stories. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to host my niece's birthday party after my sister's comment about my parenting. So some context. I, 34F, have a 6-year-old daughter, Lily. My sister, Marissa, 38F, has an 8-year-old daughter, Emma. Historically, our families have been close, but there's always been this weird competitive streak between us, mostly revolving around our kids. I like to think it's subtle, but anyone observing us would probably notice. A few months ago, Marissa approached me about hosting Emma's birthday party at my house. She said she wanted to save money and implied I had a bigger, nicer space for entertaining. Normally, I'd be happy to help, but she insisted on picking the theme, the food, and even some of the games. I was fine with some coordination, but I wanted to maintain control over what happens in my home. A week before the party, I started preparing decorations, snacks, and activities. My plan was simple: a small gathering of kids, a few games, cupcakes, and maybe a small craft project. I wanted it stress-free. Marissa, however, kept texting me with instructions. Make sure the cake has exactly 6 layers. We need 3 different kinds of juice for the kids. Can you rent a bouncy castle? By this point, I was getting frustrated. It seemed she was treating my house as if it were a party venue rather than my home. Then came the kicker. During a video call, while we were discussing a list of party favors, she casually said, "Well, you might want to make sure your daughter doesn't get too clingy with the gifts or the attention. You know how Lily can be a little dramatic sometimes. I just don't want Emma overshadowed on her big day." I froze. I've always tried to be a fair parent, and Lily has never been a problem in social settings. This comment felt like a personal attack, not just about Lily, but also a jab at my parenting. I didn't respond at first. I just ended the call abruptly. After a few hours, I texted her that I would not be able to host the party. I explained that I felt uncomfortable with the level of control she was trying to exert over my home and the subtle dig she made about my daughter. I suggested she either host it herself or pick another venue. This started a huge fight. She accused me of being petty and jealous and claimed that I was ruining her daughter's birthday for my ego. She said my refusal was so typical of me, thinking everything revolves around Lily, and that I was being overly sensitive. My parents got involved because apparently Marissa called them crying. They said I should have just sucked it up and let Emma have her perfect birthday. I explained my side, but my mom thinks I'm overreacting, and my dad just shook his head and said, "Well, that's family for you." Meanwhile, Lily sensed the tension. She was excited about Emma's party because her cousin is her best friend, but after I refused to host, she was confused and sad. I tried to explain that we would still celebrate Emma, just not in our house. A few days later, I found out that Marissa ended up renting a hall and hired a party planner. The kicker? She spent almost triple what she would have if she'd let me host. She also posted a lot of passive-aggressive stories on social media about friends and family who can't support others and how stressful it is to deal with unrealistic people. I've gotten some texts from friends and extended family asking if I could have just compromised or handled it more gracefully. I feel like I stood my ground. My home, my rules, and I don't appreciate being told that my child is a problem. But at the same time, I do feel a twinge of guilt because it was supposed to be a happy occasion for Emma, and Lily was disappointed that she couldn't fully participate. I guess I'm just not sure if I overreacted. Was I really being overly sensitive? Or was it reasonable to set boundaries for my own home and protect my daughter from judgment? ITA here. AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior at my wedding, even though it caused a huge family fight. I've been dreading writing this because it's about my family and I know things are going to get complicated. I, 28F, got married about 6 months ago, and while the ceremony itself was beautiful, the lead-up was absolute chaos thanks to my sister, Laura, 32F. I feel like I need to get this off my chest and figure out if I handled things the wrong way. A bit of background. Laura and I have always had a competitive relationship. Growing up, she was the older sister who seemed to excel at everything: grades, sports, social life. I'm not exaggerating when I say that any time I did well at something, she would find a way to outshine me or make a joke that undercut my success. I've tried for years to brush it off, but it's been exhausting, and it definitely affected our relationship. When I got engaged last year, I assumed she'd be supportive. Initially, she seemed excited, but as the wedding planning progressed, her behavior started becoming problematic. It began with subtle things like dismissing my ideas for decorations or venues, but it escalated quickly. She started criticizing almost every choice I made, from the dress to the guest list to the catering. Most of my friends told me to ignore her, but it was my wedding, and it was hard to pretend her words didn't sting. 2 months before the wedding, Laura dropped a bomb. She announced that she had booked a destination wedding of her own at the same time as mine, claiming it was a coincidence. The problem is that our family is very close-knit, and a significant number of relatives attend both weddings. I felt blindsided and hurt. When I asked her why she didn't consider my wedding date, she said she didn't think I would mind and that it was her dream venue that only had that date available. My parents tried to stay neutral, but I could see they were stressed, caught between their daughters. I tried to let it go and focus on my wedding, but the tension only grew. On the day of my bridal shower, Laura arrived late, wearing a dress that was almost identical to mine in style and color. Several of my friends noticed and commented, which made me feel humiliated. When I confronted her, she brushed it off, saying she didn't realize it would bother me. I wanted to be gracious, but inside I was seething. The breaking point came at the rehearsal dinner. Laura had made a toast that was supposed to be funny, but it ended up being a passive-aggressive roast about how I've always been the quiet, responsible one, and somehow I still got lucky enough to find a good husband. I tried to laugh it off, but my fiancé noticed I was visibly upset. Later, he pulled me aside, and we agreed I couldn't just ignore her behavior anymore. On the wedding day itself, things were fine initially, but during the reception, Laura repeatedly stole the spotlight. She interrupted the speeches I had carefully prepared, drew attention to herself, and even tried to dance with our photographer, who had already agreed to photos with me and my husband. I finally snapped during the father-daughter dance. I stopped the music, walked over to Laura, and quietly but firmly told her to stop trying to ruin my day and that she needed to respect me and my husband. She argued back, saying I was overreacting, and a huge argument ensued in front of many guests. My parents tried to intervene, but it quickly spiraled out of control. The argument lasted several minutes and left my family divided, with some blaming me for making a scene and others saying Laura had been overbearing. After the wedding, the fallout was intense. Laura stopped speaking to me, and some relatives took sides. My parents told me they were disappointed I didn't handle it more gracefully, and my fiancé and I had to spend days repairing relationships with guests who were caught in the middle. Part of me thinks I was justified. This was my wedding, and I should have been allowed to enjoy it, but another part worries that I overreacted and caused more drama than necessary. Laura has since posted subtle digs on social media, which makes me feel like the feud will continue indefinitely. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting my sister at my own wedding, even though it caused a huge fight and tension within my family? Should I have just tolerated her behavior for the sake of peace, or was I right to stand up for myself? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding and causing a huge family feud? I, 29M, have always had a complicated relationship with my older brother, Jake, 34M. Growing up, he was the golden child, athletic, charming, and always the center of attention. I, on the other hand, was quiet, academic, and often felt invisible in comparison. Our parents, while loving, definitely reinforced this dynamic. It was subtle, mostly in praise and attention, but it shaped a lot of our adult interactions. Despite this, I genuinely tried to maintain a decent relationship with him. We weren't super close, but we got along well enough. Fast forward to last year, Jake got engaged to a woman named Laura. I had met her a few times at family events, and she seemed nice enough, though honestly I never felt a particular connection with her. When he announced the engagement, I was happy for him, genuinely, but I also had a gut feeling that this wedding was going to be expensive. And as it turns out, I wasn't wrong. He called me a few weeks later and asked me to meet him to discuss the wedding plans. I went in thinking it would be about helping choose a suit or something simple, but the conversation quickly took a turn I wasn't expecting. Jake told me that he and Laura had decided on a destination wedding in Hawaii. I don't know if you've ever looked into this, but a decent wedding there easily runs into tens of thousands of dollars, even for small parties. Then he said something that made my jaw drop. We were thinking you could cover the rehearsal dinner and maybe contribute to the honeymoon if it's not too much. I blinked at him. I don't make terrible money, but I'm by no means rich, and I've been paying off student loans and trying to save for a house. Covering a wedding and honeymoon is not a small ask. It's like asking someone to take out a second mortgage. I tried to reason with him. I explained my financial situation honestly, and I also reminded him that traditionally, the parents usually contribute significantly, not the younger siblings. He got really defensive and said, Well, we just thought it would be nice if you helped out. It's your brother's big day. I said I understood that, but I couldn't afford to bankroll a wedding I wasn't even planning. He left the conversation looking annoyed, but I thought that was the end of it. It was not. Over the next few months, my family started pressuring me. My parents, who had been helping plan the wedding, would casually drop hints like, "It would be so nice if you helped with the rehearsal dinner." And when I repeated that I simply couldn't afford it, they would say things like, "But it's just a small contribution, and Jake really wants you involved." I felt like I was being guilt-tripped at every turn. Even some of Jake's friends would post on social media about how the wedding was coming together, and I noticed the rehearsal dinner sponsorship quietly mentioned. The pressure kept building. Finally, a week before the wedding, Jake called me again, practically shouting down the phone. "You're ruining this for me. Mom's upset, Dad's upset, and now I'm upset. Why can't you just help me?" I told him calmly that I wasn't ruining anything, and that I simply couldn't pay for a wedding and honeymoon. He didn't care. He said, "Fine, I guess I'll just have to tell everyone that you don't care about me or the family." I hung up feeling a mix of anger and hurt. The wedding happened without me financially contributing. I did attend and even helped in small ways like giving a speech and helping with setup on the day, but I stayed firmly out of the money side of things. During the reception, I noticed that Jake was visibly cold toward me, barely spoke to me, and Laura outright avoided me. My parents were tense as well, not speaking to me much for the rest of the evening. Several relatives whispered to each other, and I could hear comments like, "I can't believe he didn't help," and "What kind of brother doesn't support family?" I tried to shrug it off, but it stung. The fallout didn't end there. After the wedding, my parents repeatedly brought it up in conversation, and Jake has since been icy toward me. Family gatherings have become uncomfortable with subtle jabs and passive-aggressive comments. I've tried reaching out to him, explaining my position again, but he refuses to discuss it. I've been labeled selfish and ungrateful by some extended family members who never knew the details. I feel trapped in a narrative where I'm the villain just because I drew a line on finances. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being unfairly attacked. I didn't refuse to attend the wedding. I didn't refuse to help in ways that didn't cost money. And I've always supported Jake emotionally over the years. Yet it feels like my financial boundaries are being weaponized against me. I understand that weddings are important, and I wanted his day to be amazing, but I also have my own financial stability and responsibilities. I can't help but wonder if my family is holding me to a standard that doesn't make sense. So Reddit, here's the dilemma. Am I really the asshole for refusing to pay for a wedding and honeymoon I couldn't afford, or is my family overreacting? I've tried to compromise in other ways and stayed involved, but the constant guilt tripping and the ongoing tension make me feel like I did something unforgivable just by saying no. Has anyone else been in a similar situation, and did your family come around? Or is this just something I have to accept and live with? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house, even though I have extra rooms? So I, 34F, bought my first house 2 years ago after working my butt off for almost a decade. It's not a mansion or anything, but it's mine. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath place in a quiet neighborhood, and I take a lot of pride in keeping it nice and peaceful. I live alone with my dog, Milo, and honestly, it's been the happiest I've ever been. My younger sister, Amanda, 31F, has always had a bit of a chaotic life. She got married young, dropped out of college, and had 2 kids, 7M and 4F. Her husband, Jake, 33M, has never really been able to keep a steady job. They've moved apartments like 8 times in the past 6 years. Every time they move, there's drama, landlords being unfair, bad neighbors, people judging them, you name it. A few weeks ago, Amanda called me crying, saying Jake had lost his job again and they were getting evicted because they couldn't pay rent. I felt bad for her, I really did, and I offered to help her find temporary housing or help with a deposit for a rental. But she immediately said, "You have that big house with extra rooms. We could just stay there until we get back on our feet." I hesitated. On paper, it sounded like the compassionate thing to do. But I know my sister. When she says a few weeks, she means months, possibly a year. And get back on our feet usually translates to, "You'll take care of us while we figure things out." I asked her how long she thought they'd need to stay, and she said, maybe 6 months, but probably less. I told her I needed to think about it. I talked to my mom, who immediately guilt-tripped me. She's your sister. Family helps family. You have all that space. The kids could have a backyard for once. My dad, who's more practical, told me to set boundaries if I did let them move in. A written agreement, timeline, and contributions to bills. I try to picture it. Jake lounging on my couch all day while I work from home. Amanda letting the kids destroy the place. The noise. The mess. The constant tension. I'd never be able to relax in my own home again. So, I called Amanda back and said no. I told her I couldn't let them move in, but I'd still help in other ways. Maybe pay their first month's rent somewhere, or babysit while she worked, or help her find resources for housing. She went silent for a moment and then said, "Wow, must be nice to have money and a house, and no compassion." Since then, things have blown up. My mom's furious with me and said she didn't raise a selfish woman. Amanda has been posting passive-aggressive stuff on Facebook like, some people only remember they have family when it's convenient, and kids shouldn't have to suffer because adults are heartless. Mutual friends have reached out saying I should just do the right thing since it's only temporary. But here's where things get more complicated. 2 years ago, when Amanda was between apartments, I did let her and the kids stay with me for a couple weeks. It turned into 5 months. She didn't contribute to rent or utilities. She said money was tight, but then I'd see Amazon packages showing up constantly. Jake rarely helped around the house and would leave dirty dishes everywhere. The kids drew on the walls, and Amanda acted like I was uptight for caring. When they finally left, I had to spend almost $2,000 repainting and replacing damaged furniture. That experience scarred me. I told myself I'd never do it again. But now, because I said no, I'm being treated like the villain of the family. A few days ago, Amanda showed up at my door unannounced. She had both kids in the car and asked if they could just stay for the weekend because their temporary place, a motel, was too small. I refused again, and she started crying on my porch, begging me to think of the kids. I held firm and said I couldn't do it. Jake came over a few minutes later and started yelling, saying I was heartless and had forgotten where I came from. I ended up having to threaten to call the police if they didn't leave. Now, no one in my family is talking to me except my dad, who's torn. My mom said she's disappointed in me and that she'll never forgive me if my niece and nephew end up in a shelter. Amanda sent me a text last night saying, "Don't worry, I'll make sure the kids know who didn't care enough to help." I feel awful. I don't want the kids to suffer, and I do feel like I'm the only one in the family who's financially stable enough to help. But at the same time, I've already been burned once, and my home is my sanctuary. I worked so hard to build a stable, calm life, and I can't go back to living in chaos. I've been second-guessing myself constantly. Am I a terrible person for prioritizing my peace over helping my sister's family? Could I have found a compromise, like letting them stay, but setting stricter boundaries? Would that even work, given their history? Last night, my dad called and told me Amanda and the kids are staying in a friend's basement for now, but it's not a long-term solution. He said, "Your mom's worried sick about them, and honestly, she blames you." That stung. I feel like the family scapegoat for setting a boundary. Part of me wonders if I should just cave, let them move in, and hope for the best. Maybe I could write up a contract or something. But then I think about how miserable I was the last time, how I cry in my car just to have some alone time, and I know it would destroy my mental health. Still, every time I look around my house, the spare bedroom that just sits there, the toys my sister's kids left behind the last time they visited, I feel guilty, like I failed them somehow. But then I remember how many times Amanda has burned bridges and expected me to clean up the mess. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her family move in, even though I technically have room for them. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.